Hello, everyone, and welcome as we celebrate Women's History Month. Again, as always, we'd like for you to put in the chat your name, your church, your district, whatever you want to share. With us today, we have a very special guest, Ms. Martinique Meeks, who is the first woman to have served as president of the Connectional Richard Allen Young Adult Council. We've had female presidents of the YPD, female presidents of the LAIR organization, female presidents of the Connectional Presiding Elders Council. But Martinique Meeks broke the, as we would say, the stained glass ceiling barrier for RAAC during her time. So we are delighted to have you today in this speech of the Christian Recorder. Welcome to it. Welcome today.
Thank you so much. I want to just correct you. I'm the second woman to be president. I'm the first woman to hold 2 terms.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. The first woman, the first to hold 2 terms. Yes. Who was the first woman elected president of RAAC?
Okay, let me come back to you because I don't have the name off the top of my head, but I know she was from the 2nd district.
Okay, that's right. And we know, well, we should clarify that in RAAC's modern era, because before RAAC was the RAYC. So you are the first president of RAAC's modern era of being a connection organization. That's the claim to fame. Thank you for correcting that, because, sometimes we like to say Richard Allen was the first bishop of the AME Church. He was the first elected and consecrated bishop. But Daniel Coker was technically the first bishop of the AME Church. But we still want to give you your props and due for being the wonderful 2-term president that you are of the Richard Allen Young Adult Council. So, Ms. Meeks, let's just go on and get into the interview. Now, you have a legacy in the AME Church. Of course, we know that you are the granddaughter of Bishop Cummings, but you made your own way and found your own faith. So tell us about, your own faith journey through the AME Church.
Okay. I think I have, pretty much going into my teens. I think, we all have the same story, going to church, being active. I wasn't quite as active in YPD for different reasons, because although we went to YPD events, sometimes we didn't necessarily have the YPD structure on the local level, but we did attend events and we did, try to participate when we could. Also, my mother wanted to give us balance. So I've always gone to church, always attended, but never thought of myself as someone who would actually run for a position. And so even with my relationship with God, consider myself to be born in the church, but not until I got into my 20s, post-college, and then hanging out with other young adults, did my relationship, I think, kind of, take a turn and deepen, because I saw other young adults and I'm like, I want that same relationship. And also, going back to church, and then under the leadership, where they were pushing young adults to be more involved in church, and to be more a part of the church and have decisions and to really do stuff, and even through the lay organization. So I think over time, just really wanting it for myself, is how my relationship strengthened. And it kind of, that's how I really got into other organizations, including RAAC, was just wanting to see other people doing it and thinking like, okay, I want that also, but also because I was able to get it, now I want other people to experience that same thing. So it was something that came over time, but it really happened as a young adult, really in my 20s. And then even just in the last few years, really devoting myself to have time to study the word and to do more than I was doing. So I think pandemic also helped that.
Yeah. The pandemic helped us all, helped a lot of us find deep faith. But, I appreciate the fact, because, I remember when I was at Big Bethel, and I remember getting to know you, and, like, they were like, oh, there's Bishop Cummings' granddaughter. And I appreciate the fact that you've made a name for yourself through the connection and not based on your grandfather's legacy, your grandmother's legacy, your own legacy. Like, people sometimes refer to me as Jimmy Coleman Williams' godson, but I didn't get this job just because of that. I found my own path here as you found your own path to President of RAYAC. So let's dig in a little bit deeper there. So you've talked about how you were around these young adults, how you saw and said, well, I could do that too. But what led you to decide to say, I want to be president of RAYAC?
Well, actually, that's funny. So in coming back, we started at my local church, Big Bethel AME Church. We started to do young adult ministry. And I was kind of, in the leadership of that, trying to get young adults together and really wanting to push. And what we started to do is just something small, is invite people from outside of our church to our events, and, posting them on Facebook, and really trying to create a community. And because of that kind of spread, and other people saw what we were doing. And it was like, we're recreating this, this whole sort of community, just from, trying to include other young adults. And based off of that, I had, because of, I will say his name, Reginald Cleaver, I had a chance meeting with Derek. And, we had a conversation, and he invited me to be part of RAYAC, on the executive board as the PR, because I was doing flyers and PR and that kind of stuff. And throughout that process of being included in the Connectional RAYAC, I was still doing stuff on the district level, and still seeing, like, not even really getting to know more about RAYAC, and thinking, okay, if other people can know about RAYAC, if other young adults could know about RAYAC, what could we do in the AME Church to push it, to get young adults to experience what I experienced, of knowing that there are other young adults who are feeling the same way, that there's a space and a place for you in the church. And so, after thinking about it, and I'm like, well, I can encourage somebody else to do it. But then at some point I was like, I want to try. I want to push it. I feel like I could do this. I feel like I could have the patience. I feel that I could get other people to want to work with me, and we could really push this, notion of RAYAC being bigger than it was, that we could, push it to the future, and make it where, any young adult in the church could come in and feel like they're a part of something. So it was really more of the idea that if I could get people to feel how I felt, then we could just build on that.
It's interesting that you say it like that, because I remember when many moons ago, when I ran for Connectional representative, I remember one of the reasons why I ran was, I never forget being at the 2004 General Conference, and there was nothing for young adults. There was nothing organized, and we weren't organized. And I said, if I ever, aside from the RAYAC revival that was done at night, that's the one thing that the young adults had. I remember Jamal Bryant preached that year, and I said, if I ever get an opportunity to be in a place to create community for young adults in this church, I want to do that. And eventually I had the opportunity to do that in the LAIR organization. So I totally understand that desire to make a space for young adults. And, we'll talk about that through this interview, the importance of creating a space in this church. And yeah, we're going to get to that later on. But, you served admirably 2 terms. So tell us, what was it like to be the first female president of the Richard Allen Young Adult Council, the second president of the RAYC legacy?
I think it was interesting. I would say that. I think that's a good word. And different, because when you're talking about being a woman in leadership in the church outside of YPD, and then things like missionary, and where women can other components where women, automatically would just be in leadership roles, you kind of find it that you will get support, and then you will have people who will kind of doubt and will think, will kind of put you in this place of like, well, maybe you shouldn't be president right now, maybe you should run for vice president. And so coming into it, where there hadn't been a woman for 40 years. Actually, our elections are 40 years apart. So that's some quite some time not to have had a woman in leadership. And what I found is, of course, there's a lot of microaggressions. There are people who what they would do for the person previous to you and even the person after you is different. Like some of the automatic things that that you would experience as being a connection officer, people they might not do because they're like, oh, I forgot RAG had a president, or they might not necessarily automatically include you. And then also people, I think when you are a woman coming into leadership, they automatically assume that you're going to be a fixer. So something that I experienced is people having very high expectations without giving me the time to get to that point. After a year, people are questioning, okay, so what are you doing? Why haven't you done this? Why haven't you done that? Even, when we ask for a budget increase, people are saying, well, what did you do with the money before that? What they're asking all these questions that I've never heard them ask, previous to that, or even people saying, oh, well, that was a dead organization. They just wanted to give her something to do. As a woman who was in that role, it's just something for me to do. It wasn't that I could bring it to the forefront. So there was, as a woman, you kind of experience people have a lot of doubt, people second guessing you, people asking you questions like, I think I experienced this going to an ecumenical meeting. A lot of people ask me, what was my relationship status? Ask me, am I married? Am I dating? How can, as a woman, how can I travel alone? How don't I have all these people with me? Different things like that. And just sometimes even just forgetting to include you in conversations where, as a president, you should be included because that is your role. But them looking for a young adult male to be the voice of young adults because they didn't necessarily want it to be a female. So there were so many things, especially in the first term, but also the good parts were that, I found people, who I never expected to support me come out the woodwork, or I was able to encourage other women and even granddaughters to know that you don't have to put limitations on yourself. So it doesn't matter if people, think you shouldn't. That shouldn't stop you. You should still try anyway.
Wow, and I'm not going to name any names, but I personally viewed one of those situations at a meeting where it was you were running the meeting and some folk came in and tried to take over the meeting. And I was like, but she's the president. The president's running this meeting. Who do you think, because you a guy, that you're supposed to run this meeting? And I and it's interesting to hear you say the fixer, because again, and without getting in too much hot water, when we look at where we've sent our female bishops, and it's not a secret that the women bishops of our church have been sent to smaller Episcopal districts, some of which have needed to be cleaned up. And, people have asked, well, when does a female bishop get a quote unquote good district? Now, mind you, all churches are good, all Episcopal districts are good, but when do they get a large district or something that is a certain size? And, I think we'll be looking at the 2024 General Conference to see what happens, because, to your point, you said, I got elected, you expect me to fix this? I mean, what is that? Why me? Why me? So And before we hit our break, I want to dig into a little bit more to your tenure. So, what were some of the challenges and opportunities for the organization that you observed during your tenure? I know you had 8 years, and the organization that you inherited was not the organization that you left. Because I know Dr. Anderson had some challenges that I know when you transitioned, he was like, look, I did what I could, and here's what I need you to do to bring it forward. And then you took it to where he asked you to take it and beyond. So talk to us about, the opportunities and challenges that you saw with RAYAC during your tenure.
I think some of the challenges was really getting us back to a place where we were just remembered that we should be considered like YPD and missionary and lay. Like our voice should kind of matter, and then making us visible. Because I think one of the things I wanted to do was, as opportunity, is to take any meeting that we could be at, we need to be there, and not just myself as president, but as other officers, to start to show that RAYAC would be in attendance, right? To really to be seen. And I think that was a challenge of, when you have young adults trying to get people schedule and people attend, it's not their fault, but you have to kind of push through. And so I was in a place where I could attend different meetings, and I could make it a little bit more visible. And then the challenges were, not just connecting with young adults inside the church, but how do we connect with young adults outside of our church in our Zion? And I would say, we took opportunities to become more ecumenical. And I think in doing so, and us being more ecumenical, that helped with our challenge of us being visible. Because once you're seen outside of your denomination, then people inside your denomination start to say, oh, well, RAC was out, doing something at the CME church or the AME Zion church. So I know you in particular did push me to go and use our opportunities to say, like, we have opportunities where we can have spaces with other young adults. And if every, young adult organization in different denominations can grow, then we can overcome our challenges, right? We can look at how we can grow from one another. So I think that was a challenge. But also a challenge was just really requesting, more funds. Because when you're doing more ministry, you do require sometimes more money, and it's not like it's not a overwhelming amount of money, but it was more so that we could be in those spaces and places, and we could undergird some of the ministry things that we wanted to do. Because I know that Derek had wanted to start having even more events at General Conference, where we would have a forum and we would have a revival, but then pushing it to the next level to have maybe a 2-night revival, having a candidates forum, and also having meet and greets, and having other events outside of the standard thing, and then pushing it even further to say we want young adults on the main stage. So there were so many challenges, but then also the opportunity to even connect with persons 14 through 20. So now we're not 14 through 20 or 13, 1 through 13, but we're 1 through 20. And I think another challenge and the opportunity that we took is that, previous to that, we were not having our Episcopal presidents on the executive board. And so the challenge was, how do we know what's going on in the districts if we don't, also have them on our board? So we took that opportunity. So now out of our Episcopal presidents are on the executive board, and we get to hear updates from them. We get to have invitations from them. We get to be a board that is working, completely different, because it wasn't automatically something that was done in the organization.
Wow, and to talk about the ecumenical piece. I remember when we had the discussion. Remember, we ran that photo when at one point the president of the young adult groups in the AME Zion Church and the CME Church and the AME Church were all women. And it was powerful to see, two of them were ordained clergy. So it was powerful to see that photo, and just reflecting on the visibility of REAC, because I remember, I ain't gonna lie, I'm one of the ones who said, well, what is REAC doing? I mean, what is REAC doing? And so often in this church, we do have organizations that exist in name only, and I can appreciate that, especially as we get later on in this interview talking about young adult spaces. The fact that REAC isn't as visible as it should be is a problem for us. So we're going to go ahead and take our first commercial break, and we'll be right back with Miss Martinique Meeks.
Greetings. I am the Reverend Cynthia Parnell McDonald, and I am honored to present myself as a candidate for the position of historiographer, editor of the AME Review, and executive director of research and scholarship. My aspirations is to carry forward the legacy initiated by Bishop Henry McNeil Turner, a tradition rooted in elevating our rich history. My connection to the AME Church runs deep as a lifelong member and third-generation pastor, currently serving as the pastor of Cosmopolitan AME Church in Atlanta, Georgia. Over the past 6 years, I have worked in the Department of Research and Scholarship, assisting with grants, research, conference development, and webinar moderation. My teaching and research roles, as well as my experience as a grant writer successfully managing grants exceeding $3 million, has further prepared me for this unique position that demands both pastoral and scholarly acumen. My educational background includes an earned PhD in Educational Leadership and Research and a Master of Divinity degree from Candler School of Theology, Emory University. As historiographer, I believe that history is now more than ever. Given this, my campaign encompasses 3 main goals: to preserve, to promote, and to propel us toward becoming powerhouses of social impact while bridging generational gaps and paving the way for innovative engagement. To achieve these goals and more, I humbly request your support as a candidate for the esteemed position of historiographer. To learn more about our campaign, to volunteer, or to contribute financially, please visit our website. I am Cynthia Parnell McDonald, and I am dedicated to becoming the 15th historiographer of the African Methodist Episcopal Church. Thank you for your consideration, and may God bless you bountifully.
All right, and we're back. So before we get to our next question, I don't need to put you on the spot, but in your Facebook, you have 3 names. And so where did you get that middle name from? And tell us what that means.
Okay, Masi Chaba.
Masi Chaba, yes.
Yes, it's so it's my given name. As you know, when you go to the continent, in particular South Africa, we had in 2019, we did the Ubuntu with Christian Ed, and we were in the 15th district, but I stayed. I was invited by the 19th district REAC to come to their meeting, one of their executive board meetings, and they gave me the name Masi Chaba, which is Mother of a Nation. And so, I know some people don't use that. There are a lot of people have been given names and they don't usually use them, but I thought I really wanted to show my gratitude. And so I, included in my Facebook profile, but I also included in other just biographic things as well, because in a way, it made me feel like, I really wanted to incorporate it, because I feel like a mother of a nation and having been, president, you almost feel like a mother of young adults. So I think it was, apropos to be able to be given that. And it just was such, it was an honor for me, when somebody gives you a name and they really thought about it. I'm so grateful for the 19th district REAC for that name.
That's wonderful. I was given a name too by the 19th District Lay Organization, but we'll talk about my name another time. So, speaking of the Lay Organization, so you're currently working as the director of lay activities for the 6th Episcopal District Lay Organization. So, how has this transition been for you, How is it similar and different working in this branch of our Zion compared to the RAYAC?
Okay, well, and the thing is, I've actually was in the lay before RAYAC. I got into the local lay in like 2009, and I've held young adult positions previous to this. So I was the young adult rep for the conference and then the district. But I think in moving to the DOLA, which is like now you think, okay, I'm a real adult in the lay organization. And I had previously served that as on the conference as well. And both times you, I think they work hand in hand, and you feel like, you know, RAYAC definitely helped me graduate to be ready for this position. Because as DOLA, our director of lay activities, you are really in charge of the planning and the programming, and really working with not only the young adult but with the president. But you are able to kind of mold how things are going to happen. You mold, like the president gives you their vision, and then you mold how that vision is going to kind of work. And so being on the lay side, it's interesting because you really see how different age groups, they really are the same, and they have so much more in common. It's just that we think that we don't. Because you know the lay people, just like young adults, sometimes they don't want to do what you want them to do, and so you have to encourage them, right? I think when working with young adults, it taught me patience, and I kind of have to use that now, the same way. And I think with lay people, they we can be challenging. I'm a lay person. We can be challenging. And sometimes we second guess ourselves, and sometimes we don't think they don't think that they can, do what you're asking them. And so really, because I was encouraging young adults, I'm used to that. It kind of helped me to go into the lay and be like, look, you guys can do it. We can move to the next level. We don't have to do the same things that we're doing. And so I think they work on, they do work together. They're like different sides of the same coin, so to speak. And at the end of the day, both of them challenged me to know what battles to pick, like to fight. I think the whole phrase of know when to show them, know when to fold them, know when to walk away is important in both roles, as president and as director, because you can't always fight the different battles, but also you have to know when to encourage your people to do it for you, how to delegate. And I think having been in the lay first, it gave me the opportunity to learn the church. And working with the lay is always a learning, where I'm always learning more and more and more. I never feel like I know the most, and I'm so grateful for the people in my district that when I want to do something, they also encourage me. The lay gives me a type of encouragement that I can't get from anywhere else, because I am a lay person. And we know how to speak the same language as each other.
I think it's important, just listening to you said this word over, encouragement. And I think, especially when we start talking about young adults in the church, when we really look at the different generations that we have in the AME church, we have a lot more, and we're basically younger versions of older people. We're the same people, just raised in different times. And I think if we would just take a step back and look at what we have in common, some of the issues that we are having regarding spaces, generations, feeling valued, we could actually deal with. But again, hearing that I'm encouraged by the lay organization, that definitely resonates with me, because the lay people were some of the folks who encouraged me to occupy this role right now. So that's good. And being the director of lay activities, is it, just candidly, is it as much work, or is it more work, or is it a different type of work than what you were doing?
And well, and I mean, and John, that I always have more than one, have always had more than one office.
Mm-hmm.
So now, I would say the director of lay activities, especially on the principal district, is it's different work,
Mm-hmm.
because you are really pinpointing um, what needs to be done, and you're thinking about something. You're thinking about things on a multi-tier kind of thing. So it's you're thinking about, okay, I gotta have 4 lessons if you meet quarterly, right? And then, but you're also thinking about, okay, but we need to do, if we have a fundraiser, and if we have an annual meeting, and then if we have, speakers, and then can I also use my other doulas? So it's similar in a way that you are still managing people and you're still managing expectations, but it's also different because as doula, it's not necessarily my vision that I'm also always executing. It's also the president's vision, but I'm also helping the young adult rep to execute their vision as well. So it's not more or less, but it's just different. But it's challenging in a good way because it allows me to use other skills that maybe I wasn't using before. And so, I mean, for me, I like it because I like to teach, but I also like to plan. So, I mean, for me, it's been a great role thus far.
All right. Well, let's dig in a little bit more to this question about young adults. We hear this all the time. So I heard this when I was the young adult rep, and now I'm no longer the young adult rep. Um, I'm barely a young adult in the church. That's what we'll discuss for another time. Since now the REAC age is up to 45, and I'm 42, so I thought I was out. Then y'all put me back in for another 3 more years. But in all seriousness, we hear a lot about young adults leaving the church. And we just, for example, on our Facebook page, and we'll be running it in our recorder, ran an article about the nuns, people, how, like the nuns, the people who have left the church or are finding different ways to express their faith. What are your thoughts about the situation? Because that's our age group. I mean, I'm 42, but I have plenty of folk who they will go to a Sunday brunch. They ain't trying to go to nobody's church, shopping around churches. So, what are your thoughts?
So as far as young adults leaving the church, it's very interesting when you talk about that, because one, you got to take it back to maybe about 40 50 years ago, even maybe 30. If you talk to a lot of the persons who are in leadership now, some of them weren't necessarily in the church as young adults. Okay, so although there is concern about people not leaving the church, some of the young adults didn't even come back into the church until they were young adults. So we have to understand that, there has always been a segment of our church population that was not in the church as a young adult, whether they left and then they came back, or they were in it and then they left. So that's something that we have to understand. Once we understand that, then everything else will be a little bit make more sense. I think when we talk about young adults leaving, um, we have to start to ask, as I've stated before, why are some of them staying? Because it's easy to leave, but it's harder to stay. And once we figure out why people are staying and build upon why they stay, then we can start to, gather why the people are leaving. And some people are leaving because, they don't feel, young adults don't feel seen, or they don't feel like their presence matters. Now, at the local level, which is where people are leaving, we have to start to ask our local churches, how are you empowering young adults who are attending? How are you offering them something that makes them want to stay. And it doesn't, and it's not always about, they have to have, you got to have new music, you got to have a certain preacher come in or something. Sometimes it could be as simple as, if they said that they need childcare, are you willing to provide that for them? Or if they said that, I have an idea for the church to have a multiple streams of income, will someone hear my presentation? It could be small things that are causing people to leave, but we're not usually concerned about those things until they are already gone. And most of the time, people, when they're about to leave, they exhibit signs of stress. They exhibit signs of, okay, I no longer want to be here. I mean, just think about if somebody is, wants to quit their job. They have all of these little signs to say that they want to do that. Now, with young adults, we rarely take the time to say what were the signs that they were exhibiting before they actually left the church. What were the language that they were using? What were the symptoms and how they attended things and how they expressed and how they talked to us? Did they feel fulfilled? Did we have one-on-one relationships with them? Did we even try to incorporate them into, the church and leadership? And then also, if you have young adults who you don't treat right and other young adults see this, why would they stay? It's the same thing that, what's been going around that's very popular now is the toxicity of your work environment. If you're interviewing somebody for a job and they ask you, why are your employees staying, or why do you have such a high turnover rate for employees to leave because your environment is toxic, the same thing could be said for our churches. We have a lot of toxic church environments, and we're not willing to look at that. But we want people to stay because we want them to stay based off tradition. And that is no longer. So there are so many things that we have to look at inside before we can say they're leaving, why are they leaving? Sometimes there are symptoms, but we're not willing to, diagnose ourselves and say, okay, this is what it really is that the church is a little toxic and we don't know how to treat people who aren't certain people.
Wow. And you said a lot right there. And I know my colleague, Dr. Norris, when we interviewed him, he talked about a few of those things. But people aren't going to stay in a place because we've been here for forever. There are options now. And I think that that's something that we really need to look at and deal with. Like I look at my own church journey. I'm been able and supportive of me that I've enjoyed. But when I go to church and I look around and I'm like, okay, so people say, I remember back watching Coming to America, the first one, where people said, where the barber said, well, if you're gonna find somebody, go to the church. It's a little bit difficult for these churches down here, for some of these churches that I go to, because I don't see anyone who looks like me. And thinking about belonging, I mean, the fact that if I go to a church and all you're celebrating are older persons ministries, what's there for me? What singles ministry do you have? Who are you trying to attract? And I think those are things that we really need to, and some of our preachers and lay people are doing that. But I think sometimes we really have to be more intentional. So thank you for saying what you said about that. So let's take a different look before we move to our next commercial. We brought up your international work. Ms. Masachaba was the name they gave you. So you were the first Masachaba. You were the first RAYAC president to go globally in almost decades. So let's talk about what you found in your journeys and what are some things that the church can learn.
Okay. So I want to say the getting there was also important too, because I was, for a long time, I was very nervous to go to go over and to be there. Just thinking of, what are they gonna think about me? Am I lacking? Am I whatever? And just allowing certain things to stop me. And then finally having people to support me and say, like, no, you need to go. When you go over there, it's going to be good. It's not going to be bad. It's not going to be, anything that you're thinking. And so I'm finally getting over there, in both parts of in 2019 and then also in 2022. I think what I really experienced is all of the things that we have in common. Was the first thing. Because when you're a young adult in the church, it doesn't matter where you are, you have this same feeling of you're not being represented enough. They're not going to use your voice enough. They're not allowing you to do enough. And so really trying to push through that. But also in my nervousness, how excited they were for me to be there. How, them feeling like we didn't think about them outside of the district, thinking that, 1 through 13, we don't acknowledge them enough. Or at that point, we had not acknowledged them enough, and thinking, here we are with, a strong RAYAC, and we have so much to teach, but no one has, given us the opportunity. And so I definitely saw, I want to say, some of the best RAYAC meetings I had ever attended, business sessions. And the attention to detail was, I didn't have any expectations. So just anything that happened was amazing and great for me to see. It also came at a time when I just needed to experience something different. Even in the worship, it was a deep feeling of really connecting with everyone. And sitting in the business sessions and, getting idea of how much further we could be with our structure and how committed we have to be to, to really see our ideas through and for them to have, whatever vision it was, and to hear all the committee reports, and for it not to be an excuse of like, well, I couldn't do it because of this. It really helped me like refocus and retrain myself to know that whatever we wanted to do is possible. And that, we can learn. I think what we can learn is that structure is very important, and that we can't always, think that it has to be based off of what we learned and even YPD, really looking at the RAYAC over and in the 19th and in the 15th, it was a reminder that we're young adults and that we can really push ourselves further than we have been pushing. And I think it was great to for people to be excited for your presence. Because sometimes, like I said, as a woman in the position, it wasn't always, people weren't always welcoming. They weren't always inviting me to different things. They weren't always, having me to be somewhere. And so to go somewhere, and for people to have open arms and to be genuinely excited, but to have this expectation, like, you're going to give a presidential address, you're going to do this, you're going to do that, and to be happy that you're there. It's something that we, every leader should experience, because we need to know that, there are people who want us in there, who want to hear our voice, and who want to know that, we still connect to them. And so it was just eye-opening. And even in 2022, when I went to the 15th district for their meeting, it was again reinvigorating to be in worship and sessions where, I can hear the commonality of what is going on, um, where I am. And then to also tell them like, hey, we're going to do the same thing. We're just because we're in different countries and continents doesn't mean that we have anything that is above one another. And so just being able to be in both of those spaces just gave me a feeling that I don't know, it's hard to describe, but it's very life changing. I think that if you are a connectional leader, that we have to, at some point have a willingness to travel so that we can see how are we in fact connected.
Wow, wow, wow. And again, the word that I heard you kept saying is connection. Like the connection actually works. It really does work if you let it work. We're going to hit our final commercial break, and we'll go to our final questions.
My name is Gregory Eason, a candidate for Episcopal service in 2024. Leadership determines the moral and spiritual environment in which the church operates. With over 40 years in ministry and 37 years as a pastor, you can count on me to do what is right and lead with integrity and fiscal accountability. I'm a bridge builder, and we'll respect and celebrate the senior leadership of our church while mentoring and providing opportunities for our up-and-coming leaders. I'm a proven supporter of women in ministry and our laity and all the components of our church. It's a season for proven leadership. Eason for Bishop.
All right, and we're back. So let's talk a little bit about the impending General Conference. So we know that the 2024 General Conference is one of the most impactful ones that we've seen, and including one of those things that you mentioned, who we bring into the church. And we know that at this General Conference, we are going to deal with the issues of LGBTQ plus inclusion. We're also going to hear what's going to happen with the retirement services issue, and we have to replace at least 6 bishops. So, what are some of your thoughts about what may happen, given being the seasoned AME that you are, former Connectional president? What are your thoughts and hopes for this General Conference?
Well, of course, one of them being a woman, I would love for us to elect more women, and that is inclusive of the general officer as well as bishop. I think we are going to have to look at, when we talk about connection, and our church being global, electing persons that represent that global side, because all of the candidates can't be from one side or the other. And, and in doing so, are we electing persons globally without limitations, or will we be electing with limitations? I think that as far as, there are a lot of hot button, topics, including inclusion. And, the thing is, as a church, we have to decide what we are called to say and what we're called to do, and what we're gonna take a stand on. And I think, I won't get into my personal opinion of different things, but I think that the words that we have to take into General Conference is, we can no longer wait, right? If not now, then when? And so when we think about any issue, the question that our parameter is, if not now, then when? If we are not willing to stand and say, we believe this, then who will? And then if not now, then when? If not us, then who? And so when it comes to that, and even the retirement issue, people, they need to know the facts. We need to know the facts and how can we move forward. And if not with this group, then with who can be able to, change the scope. And so really, my hope for General Conference is that we have moments where we can really coalesce in love, and then figure out how we can be in business as well. Like, how can we have the business sessions, disagree, and then also come and have worship? But when we're in the business sessions, we're not trying to stop something from happening because we don't want it to happen yet, or we're not trying to make only certain legislation go through. Because I think we're at this, like you said, we're at a point where we can't wait any longer to say what our opinion is, and we can't wait any longer to not make the changes that need to be made. And so there are some big changes, but there are some little things that are coming through that we have to pay attention as well, because we're really setting up the church for the next 50, the next 100 years. Because we're now putting into place leadership that will be in leadership for more than 20 years, right? We, in the last General Conference, we have bishops that will be retiring in the 40s. And so, and that could very well be the for some others that will come into play in 24. And so we have to give them not only the right leadership, but we have to give them the power to do what is needed. And then we have to make sure that, the things that we're voting into place allows for the church to have room to grow. We don't want to not vote on certain things and then again continue to hinder the church so that it doesn't have what it needs to grow. Because at the ultimate goal of the church, and I think any denomination past their General Conference, is to grow. And so that in 28, that we are looking at a church that has expanded, and a church that has people who have ideas that are past what the ideas are in 24.
Wow. So as we close, Ms. Meeks, we've been talking about the church for a lot, but I see those nice paintings on the wall behind you. Tell our viewers something about Ms. Meeks beyond the church. Because we know that, I know in your personal life, you are quite the creative person. You went to Savannah College of Art and Design, and you've done graphics for any number of AME and non-AME entities. But tell us about you beyond the church.
Okay. Well, as you stated, professionally, I am a graphic designer, and I've done, work with different levels of the church, including the Christian Recorder and the Sunday School Union. But also, I am someone who is compelled to teach, and I've been teaching art. I've actually been teaching art longer than I really have been an active in active leadership in the church. And so I do, paint and sip classes and different art classes. And like I would say 90% of the work behind me is what I have done or I have taught a class on. And I also do consulting with social media, consulting with small businesses. And I think really in every aspect of my life, it comes back to teaching and encouraging people. And I think that who I am inside the church and who I am outside the church is, at this moment in my life, has combined and coalesced and given greater purpose. And so because of what I do outside the church, it has strengthened what I do inside the church. But it all comes back to me always wanting to teach and to be someone who is a giver, because as I am given, I also want to give to others.
Creative, giving, I think that that's something that those two words definitely describe you, Ms. Meeks. Well, thank you for being here with us in the Christian Recorder. I'm glad that we get to talk a little bit about you and hear the wisdom that you have regarding the church and your experiences. And I know that you've touched a lot of lives in your work with RAYAC. And again, we can't underestimate the fact that, even though sometimes we see you behind the scenes, that we know that you have done a lot of work to push people further and beyond. So we're definitely looking to hear more from you going forward. So Ms. Meeks, again, thank you for sharing your time here with us today. And we're looking forward to our next interview in this wonderful Women's History Month. But again, we're looking to hear from all of you again and see you all again here on the Christian Recorder Dialogues. Have a wonderful evening, and we'll see you all soon.